I'm going to extend the warmest welcome. And I want to say happy Monday, happy holidays. Really, it is a tremendous honor to welcome Hans and to support Hans's vision. And when I saw today's lineup and the incredible, the reputable, the diverse practitioners today for this panel, I really wanted to say I was motivated, I was moved by each of you and inspired by what Hans, as an artist in residence for 2020, pulled together. My goodness, don't let pandemics stop us. Hans has moved mountains, and so do all of you. So thank you. I just want to set a really supportive and really professional frame very briefly. My name is Jonah Bokaer, and I founded Chez Bushwick in 2002. It's one of the very, very few New York City arts facilities to have safely reopened during the pandemic. And the way that we have done that is with solos and cleanings and repeat. It has been incredible. It has been strenuous, but we today, Monday, launch week 12 of a safe reopening. And Hans is on site in Chez Bushwick. So this is ambitious to do this live. There's an aspiration to translate, which we're going to go with it, and we love it. And actually, this is an organization that encompasses 5 languages. So when Hans suggested that, that was very dear to my heart. My grandmother spoke a dialect of Spanish. So we're going to hand this off to our program manager, who can speak about the residency program, to Hans, who will probably introduce our really esteemed panelists today. We are live from Chez Bushwick. And in addition to that, I'm going to take what I would call the opportunity to read a land acknowledgement for the Brooklyn chapter of our organization. So we, at Chez Bushwick, where Hans is and where many of us are, it is with gratitude and it is with humility that we acknowledge that we are learning, we are speaking, and we are gathering on ancestral homelands of Canarsie and the Munsee Lenape. The Lenape, which many of you know, who are the indigenous peoples of this land. We and the organization constantly pays honor and respect to our ancestors, past, present, and future. We are committed to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. That is also how we program. We call on arts organizations such as ours and our peers in Brooklyn and beyond, as well as ourselves individually and as artists, to honor these histories and these stories of this land's first peoples. So with that, I want to thank each of you who are panelists and say, wow, I'm really starstruck today, to acknowledge the staff and the resident artists who come with vision, Elena, Maria Wilson, everyone. So over to you. And I hope that you'll get involved. We really have proven unstoppable this year and have safely reopened. So happy week 12 and welcome, Hans.
Hello, everyone. Before we jump into this great panel, I'd just love to introduce myself. I am Elena Wilson, company manager with Jonah Bokaer Arts Foundation. Our organization was founded in 2002 by Jonah, who you just heard from. Jonah Bokaer Arts Foundation is an artist-run nonprofit organization dedicated to the advancement of interdisciplinary art and performance, with a strong focus on experimental dance. We operate an annual Artist in Residence program out of Chez Bushwick, which is our affordable studio space located in Brooklyn, New York. And while our residencies normally take place in 15-week cycles, this year, due to these circumstances, we had 5 awarded artists that have remained in residence for the full duration of 2020, including through our studio's safe reopening for solo rehearsals, which took place and commenced in October. So today's panel was spearheaded by Hans, one of our 5 current artists in residence here at Chez Bushwick, and Hans is broadcasting live from the studio itself. And we are more than thrilled to present today's discussion on flamenco in contemporary and experimental spaces. So without further ado, we'll hand it over to Hans and our brilliant panel.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. There's a lot of traffic noise outside, so I just had to close the window. I'd first like to say thank you very much to the Jonah Bokaer Arts Foundation Elena, thank you for all of your support. This has truly been a very strange year for all of us. And it really means a great deal that I'm able to do this event and have these wonderful panelists here with me in conversation about so many topics that I think are so really important. With that, I'd also like to thank my colega Leslie Roybal, who assisted me in curating this panelist list and really figuring out who are the right people to bring together to have an interesting conversation about some of these topics. So I'd like to offer up a little bit of, Leslie, if you'd like anything you'd like to say, please feel free to add. I am so thrilled to have you here as well.
Thank you, Hans. Just a really quick word about how pleased I am that this is coming to fruition right now and how important these ongoing conversations are for not only the flamenco community, but for the greater dance economy that we are acknowledging and opening and really having some fierce conversations about what's happening throughout our flamenco ecosystem and how that really opens up into the greater economy of dance worldwide. So I'm really very grateful to have been a part of this, and I'm really excited about this conversation that's about to take place.
Thank you, Leslie. To begin, I just kind of want to first move myself out of the sunlight because I can't see, but to introduce the panelists that are going to be here today. It's a very wide variety of panelists who all come from different walks of life with different focuses on what they're doing, all with the same mission of really supporting this art practice. And we're actually working over multiple time zones. We have panelists who are here from Madrid, from Dubai, from Miami, from Philadelphia, and my colleague Ryan Rockmer, who is right here translating for us, wave Ryan, is here from LA, Leslie's here from New Mexico, and then I'm here in New York with the Jonah Bokaer Arts Foundation. So it goes all the way from 11 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night. So with that said, I just want to first say that there will be no questions at the end of this broadcast, just in order to maintain everybody's time and so that Fernando can go to bed at a reasonable time and we can be kind to him with that. But if you do have any questions, please put them into the chat. You can message me directly or the organization, and I will make sure that all those questions get to the right people that they need to go to. So with that, I'd like to just briefly introduce each of my panelists. Starting with Elba, who is the Executive Director and Artistic Director of Pastoni Arte, who has been at this game for almost 3 decades now, Elba, I believe, who is originally from La Paz, Bolivia, and has a wonderful organization located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have Fernando Lopez Rodriguez, who is a flamenco artist, experimental flamenco artist and researcher, who has written these fabulous books on the queer history of flamenco across many decades. He just released his 2nd book right now, which I'm in the middle of reading, which is reading Spanish is really hard. Talking Spanish is really hard, but it's been like a great endeavor, and it's exciting to have him here. He's here from Dubai right now, calling in. So thank you, Fernando.
Thank you for the invitation.
We have Sonia Franco, who is here from Madrid, Spain. She is an actor, choreographer, and dancer who recently won the Madrid Certamen's Prize for Choreography, as well as the Flamenco Vivo Carlota Santana Prize, that brought her here to do a residency in New York and teach a choreographic workshop using some of her own experimental practices and methodologies. And then last but not least, we have wonderful Niurka Marquez, who is an experimental flamenco artist, as well as a researcher located in Miami, who has also been at this for a really long time and has been in Spain, LA, Miami, all over, really bringing her practice into all kinds of places and spaces not typically associated with flamenco. So thank you, Niurka. With that, I'm going to jump right in and really talk about what it is I'm really trying to find out, truly, because I find myself in actually more question than I am really anything else. I had initially talked to all the panelists about having this really over-the-top, intellectual, academic, institutional conversation about things that truly I don't give a fuck about. And I'm gonna say fuck, and we're gonna curse in this thing, so be prepared. Because what really is of value to me is really understanding who these artists are, these practitioners are, why it is that they do what they do. And the first question that I found myself having had a lot to do with failure. How do we deal with failure? How do we understand failure? How do we contextualize our relationship to failure? We consider it to be this bad word, like to fail is this really terrible thing. But the truth of the matter is that in failure, I personally feel that I find the most freedom, because if I'm gonna fail, that means I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so my first question, and I'm gonna direct this to Elba and Niurka first, is sort of talk to me when I ask, when I say failure, what does that bring up to you? And how has that really informed your practice as artists through these through this time?
What's very interesting for me, as I notice as you age, aging process is interesting. I continually have to ask my question about what my relationship to flamenco is as I grow older. That is the question that I continually ask in order to stay relevant, in order to stay connected to who I am now. The person I was then at 20 is very different than the person I'm 62. So when you're looking at failure at a particular age, it's very different when you're looking at failure at 25, 30. So when you're asking this question, failure, I don't think of, many of my choreographies probably never went to the level that I wanted to, but I don't consider them failure. It was just a process of learning. You know, because there's a lot of choreographic challenges in flamenco because of its particular tradition. I had to re-educate my body in a different way. So there was always a concept of looking at it very differently than other people. And that already, you know, that's scary at that time, you know, 25 years ago. And so what I continually look at in my work now, you know, I think, oh, this is missing, that's missing. But at the time that I was in it, I was learning. It wasn't about making a perfect work. It was, how do I deconstruct flamenco? You know? So to me, they were all experiments. Thank goodness I didn't think of them as failures, because I probably wouldn't have done them. So, and now of course, I go into the work and I look at it and I see this missing pieces. But again, fortunately for me, I look at failure in a very contextual way as a learning process. So I never took it, oh, I'm a failure, thank goodness, because it was always learning.
I have to actually echo that. And what I think is interesting is that I actually purposely build failure into my processes. And I don't know if it's that I'm a masochist or what it is, but I do it. I think I do it out of a necessity to continue to question, even within the questioning. You know, my mom loves to joke that I was born with the "but why" in my mouth. You know, it's like I salí con el de fábrica. You know, and I think I still continue to do that. You know, like even when I'm the one that has set up the parameters for myself, even when I'm the one asking the question, I still ask the but why, you know? And I think that and sorry, I have sound effects today. The way that failure is contextualized in the arts, and particularly here in the US, when you have to jump into something within like a university setting or within a formal training kind of space, you know, I was destined to fail from day one, because the style that I was in, both with Afro-Cuban dance and flamenco, you know, it was like the styles I was in, the traditions I was in were already not compatible with what was expected, you know, of outcome. And so this battle with the failure comes out of the fact that what you do doesn't fit into the box we've set up for you, right? has been part of it from day one. And then you add to that very early on, you know, at the age of 22, I had a major injury that put me out for 6 months, and I had to relearn everything. I literally had to relearn how to turn, how to do footwork, because, you know, the pain was so bad. I think that when you have to go through those processes, failure takes on a very different color and texture, you know? And I have to echo Elba's, you know, as you age, you know, your body's telling you, yeah, no, that's not going to happen today, right? So when that happens, when that failure happens, then how do you manage that, you know? And how do you get away from getting so stuck in ideas, you know, that you stay in your body? For me, that's, I don't, like I said, I purposely build failure into the mix, because I think it's already, as a woman, as a Latina, as an experimental choreographer, you know, who doesn't land neither here nor there personally or in my work, you know, failure is already part of the equation for me. And it's okay. It's my friend. It's what opens the door to play.
Thank you very much. That's well said. Elba, is there anything else you'd like to add or respond to that?
I think I really want to look at what she's, you know, putting failure as part of the equation. And I think I did that unconsciously, because I did a lot of site-specific work. Well, there is a lot of possibilities of failing in site-specific work due to the constraints of flamenco's space usage, the training that we have to learn space, all these limitations. You know, we're trained highly in small spaces. So I put myself through challenges to open myself to the possibility of creating something that who knows what's going to happen. So I think I set myself up for failure in these situations on purpose as well, unconsciously.
And Eva, just to chime in, beyond just the fact that we're trained, you know, with the conception of the small space, you know, site work is as unpredictable as you can possibly get, you know. So the idea that you can control circumstances goes out the door.
Correct. And that's what I found interesting, because I couldn't, I'm not from Spain. I needed to find my way of looking at flamenco, seeing the flamenco that is mine. And site-specific work afforded me that possibility in a very specific way, dealing with audiences in a different way. What do I do about floor when I want to have, you know, footwork? All these interesting challenges that maybe I dealt with them differently, others, and maybe there were failures, but I learned from them. I learned a lot about losing space. So again, a learning tool. I go back to that.
Thank you. I'd like to pose the same question to you, Sonia and Fernando. Kind of, what is your own relationship to play, and how do you, and I'm sorry, not to play, but to failure, and how do you navigate that as artists? When failure offers you so much freedom and opportunity to do something, to learn something, but there's this feeling that you're not allowed to fail. There's this feeling that there is some kind of shame that's connected to failure. How do you navigate that within your own practices, and how do you work with it?
Sonia, do you want to start?
Sí. Puedo hablar en español, ¿no? A ver, el tema del fallo me parece un temazo, ¿no? Para hacer 20 espectáculos, por lo menos. Creo,
20 shows at least. Yes, it's true. Hans and I were talking about this the other day for a while, because it's something really pretty in reality. The reality is that we're taught a lot about beauty in a correct way, but in reality, when you travel, you realize what is pretty or what is correct is very different in other cultures. A pretty woman, when she's making herself pretty or putting on certain makeup and then to put on sort of white makeup to make her skin look more white, that's a certain aesthetic in a certain space. And in Buto dance, with deformity and how the body moves in that sense, it's very different from beauty in some other space. And in teaching, we learn from what is the discipline or what is good and what is bad. But we can also start from the place of where our differences are and then from those failures that exist. And Bob Marley, as an example, who discovered a great number of successes for Bob Marley existed out of his failures. Or improvising, some artists improvising with the audience and then adapting to a ton of errors that are going to emerge from that. And then from that is the possibility to create something really amazing. And I've been spending a lot of years in improvisation and in flamenco. And flamenco originates from there. And flamenco begins from the need to dance or to sing just because you have to, whether you have money or not. And that doesn't mean there isn't a margin of error. In flamenco, there's a lot of pride, and in dances in general. Our ego plays a large role in a lot of that, because people are looking at us, so we want everybody else to look at us in the best way possible, or what we believe is the best version of ourselves. But actually, I've been spending a lot of time with Raul Big Mac. He's an improviser of music, and they do a lot together. Bob told me something once when he saw me dance, and it's the prettiest thing that someone's ever told me when I was dancing. And he said, I love watching you dance because I can see your insecurity. And your insecurity connects with us. It connects with the audience. You see whatever movie, and whomever you connect with or empathize with, it might be with the little short, fat one that has some issues in life, not necessarily with the one where everything is going well for that person. So when I see somebody on the stage, it's really important to see their vulnerability. It's really important to see that vulnerability, because you can't feel that pain or that insecurity or pain or a ton of emotions that person is going to interpret if they aren't vulnerable in that moment. So in the end, it stays at something really superficial if they're not vulnerable. But when we see huge artists, really successful artists like Farruquito, you just throw yourself into the deep end, and whatever happens, happens with all of that risk that's involved. And even the folks that are so virtuous in what they're doing, sometimes we forget to see the human that's up there as well. And that's the most important for me, that whoever's dancing, that their movement isn't necessarily super difficult, and that's what I need to be focusing on every day for myself, because it's been the total opposite for me. When I see when I was going through the process with Raul for Sonido del Flamenco, the difficulty was not exactly what I had. The difficulty was realizing not what I have to do or not what I should do, but actually throw myself into the emptiness or into that vastness of what I could do or what might not be possible. And that's what a lot of artists are doing. And we believe in a lot of the set standards or codes in the disciplines, or these certain aesthetics that are there.
vas a construir una estructura muy rígida, ¿no? Y esto a veces a los
But if you stay within those, if you stay within those limits, then it's going to turn out to be like a prison because you're going to be so limited in the end. And the other day when we were talking, and we were talking about learning about clowning has all to do with failure and your errors and the possibilities of doing something incorrectly or badly. You can't play if you don't enter into that space. Same thing when you're young. When you're playing with certain challenges and then you always win. You don't really gain much from those moments.
So we are speaking about failure. I'm gonna try to practice it because my English is not so good. So I will speak in English just to create this atmosphere about failure. So for me, like in the very beginning, my dancing life started with failure because I was 11 years old. I was a boy, so I wasn't supposed to dance because it was something for girls, at least in my neighborhood and in most of the parts of my city, Madrid. And also because I was suffering a sort of a breakdown. So I was searching for something to help me, you know? And my sister used to dance ballet, and I started with ballet and with flamenco. And I found an answer, but then quickly I realized that my body wasn't the perfect body to become a professional dancer, neither in ballet nor in flamenco, because I was like left-footed or left-handed. So I couldn't do pirouettes on the right sense. Then I was too short. So a lot of different things. And then I wasn't interested at all in doing certain things because it was like too silly for me. But all these failures of my body and even of my mind made me able to search different things. And as you said before, I think it was the force to become a different kind of artist and also to create a new different path, a new different aesthetic project. And when I started to create like contemporary pieces, I also connected a lot with Buto. I think it was like the entrance for me, or the universe where I could find some interesting skills that I could use for my flamenco. And also other artists and performers like Ivo Dinge, but also not only contemporary dancers, but also performers that were working with this fragility, with this experience of falling, losing verticality, not being able to finish a correct movement, shaking, losing the clothes, and all these kind of things that showed us as human beings on the stage. In the beginning, that was like, for me, the first step to break with the image of the perfect dancer, the image of the perfect body. It's still something that I am incorporating in my pieces, but as Hans asked how we are dealing with the scene of failing and so on, it's still something difficult because there's always shame, there's always like nervous or something like this. And for example, I do a lot of things on the stage that I believe in, but that are not provoking me pleasure when I dance it. And a lot of things that I cannot see in photos or in videos because it's like, okay, I think I have to do it. I think it's powerful for the message I want to pass, but I don't want to see myself in the image with the naked body or something like this, because I don't have this kind of perfect body. But I think it's important to show other kind of bodies on the stage. Same for the movements, the choreographies, the actions, and so on. So I think it's not that easy, but it's like a political engagement that someone can have. And I see, I say political engagement because you have to pay this shame that you feel when you see the pictures and the video, and also because you have to understand that a lot of programmers and in a lot of places you are not gonna be programmed because of this lack of classical beauty, because of this different proposal.
Gracias, Fernando. Muy bien dicho. Your English is very good, so don't feel nervous about it. So my next topic that I want to bring up to all of you has also been something that I feel like I have been thinking about, not just in this relation to this year, but really in relation to the long time that I have been really practicing all of the art forms, which is play. How do we think about play? You know, it's something really interesting, that something so crucial to development as adults from children, play, which allows us to project and allows us to interpret and understand the world, and is encouraged in children, is something that as adults, I feel we are told we can't do. Play is bad, play is frivolous, play is this thing that, you know, is not goal-oriented or product-driven. You know, it's useless. And yet, we find ourselves, I have found myself as an adult, finding other ways to find that play. Maybe not necessarily in my practice, but in other ways that don't serve my greater good. Because I think, oh, to play is to go out to a bar, get really fucked up and drunk, you know, and black out, or do a bunch of drugs, or fuck everybody that I can find, instead of really allowing myself to play and have fun without it having to be something really important. And I think, for me, one of the things I'm really investigating as an artist is, how do I find play again? What were the things that me as a creator, as an artist, as a doer of things, used to really enjoy and love? And when did that go away? And why did it go away? And why do we over-intellectualize things? So for me, I'm really interested in, from all of you, how do you find that play in your work? Or do you? Has that gone away for you? Sometimes in thinking about it, do we realize, oh shit, I don't play at all. I don't do anything just for me that has nothing to do with my research or my thesis or my investigation or my choreography or my add any kind of other thing to the list. I just do it for me. This year I took up skateboarding. I'm 35 years old. I can't fall. If I fall, I break, but I'm skateboarding anyways in the streets because it's fun. So that is my next question to all of you. How do you find play?
I think I'm gonna jump on that one, Hans. You know, it's funny. As a kid, I was a really serious kid. My idea of play was strategizing. You know, thinking about things and figuring out how things worked. Right, taking apart things in the house that my mom wasn't too appreciative of, and then figuring out how they worked, and you know, always having leftover pieces, and the thing never worked again. So you know, that was me as a kid. You know, for me, play was about, you know, questioning and figuring things out, and so. I think it's really funny because my relationship with it has changed so much over the years, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. It's like play, and I honestly think it has to do, I'm going to go back to Elba's comment of the aging female body, you know? I think it has to do with the fact that you got two choices here, bro. You know, you either deal with the fact that, you know, there are certain things your body is not going to do anymore, and that other things that you used to be able to do, now you just look really funny doing them, right? So like, I don't work with a mirror, for example. I don't like to work with a mirror. I've never liked it. And so for me, play is something that is very attached to pleasure, personally. You know, to me, play and pleasure go hand in hand. And when I was able to make that, you know, I think I spent a lot of years overthinking it, because you know, and I think it happens, I think Elba can probably chime in on this, you know, when you're not born in Spain and raised in a flamenco family, you know, and you're coming at this from the outside as an outsider, right? It's almost like you get handed this book of rules and regulations that you have to adhere to, right? And I think it's in the moment where you go, you know what, fuck the rules, you know? Where suddenly you have this space to play and to like be who you are, you know? And I think the day that it clicked for me, that the way you know, Sonia mentioned improvisation earlier, and I want to kind of redirect that a little bit, because for me, the way improvisation works in flamenco is similar to the way it works in Afro-Cuban dance. You know, there are these very set rhythmic structures, and you have this body of steps, right? In traditional flamenco, conventional flamenco, let me use that word instead of traditional. In conventional flamenco, right? You have these this body of steps and these rhythmic structures and these ideas that you have to stick to, right? Ese es el librillo. That's what they hand, that's the book they hand you, right? And I think it was the day that in the middle of some improvisation, you know, one of the musicians messed up, and it sounded like a drumming break to me, and my brain was able to make that click of, oh shit, wait, this is the same thing that happens with Afro-Cuban drumming. Hang on, I got this now, you know? And I gave myself that permission to breathe and to just kind of, you know, screw up if I needed to screw up and see what would happen at the other end. And it became fun, you know? I think that was the moment for me where I said, okay, this is the way that I insert play here. And for me, inserting play in conventional flamenco, particularly having, you know, despite having resided in Spain for a number of years, most of my, you know, quote unquote career, if that's what we're calling it, has happened here in the US, you know? And so the idea of inserting play in those spaces, right, where there's already all of these expectations, has really been, it's been a political move, like Fernando was saying. You know, it's been political, and it's been about inserting something else, inserting another option, you know, and saying, no, porque no me da la gana, because simply, I just don't feel like it, you know, you're not paying my rent, you're not the one that has to sleep with me at night, so you know what, no, you know, you pay your ticket to somebody else, and you happy, me happy, we good, you know? So I think a big piece for me, a big piece of play is about ownership, you know, ownership of that space for yourself. You know, you're putting, Fernando, you know, so much of what he was saying was resonating for me, because I don't have the typical, you know, dancer's body, not even close, right? And so having grappled with that all my life, coming to the realization of, hang on a second, but I want to do this because this feels good. Like, this is releasing endorphins right here, and I'm feeling hella good. And no, this is not a therapy session, but look how much fun this is when I'm able to bring that part of myself here and able to engage with those around me and get everybody in on the game, you know? And hey, if you want to come into the game, you have to kind of surrender. You have to kind of give yourself over to it, you know? So yeah, and I won't keep talking. So, but yeah, it's just, for me, it's been that. It's play is about, as I aged, I didn't have much of a choice. So.
And I want to go into that, you know, in terms of play. I, coming from a very particular background, you know, born in La Paz, Bolivia, I started my dance trajectory in what we call Spanish dance, right? And in Bolivia, you know, being whiter is definitely, that was my family thought of themselves as the conquistadores, but check it out, I'm 50% indigenous. So that there's this seriousness that really was very specific to my work, and play was not even an option. I'm just, I had to be the strong person. I had to make things happen, and no, play was not even in the wildest vocabulary until, you know, I started not wanting to dance anymore. Do I want to do another llamada? Do I want to do another escobilla? No, I stopped going into my studio. My practice became Pilates only. And so fortunately for me, I started working with Susan Rethorst, a choreographic of mine, a brilliant postmodern choreographer. And then I started working with postmodern dancers. And that's what they do. This is like in the last 7 years, that's all you do is you play. Oh my gosh. That experience was the most absolutely liberating. It allowed me to actually not take myself seriously. And you know, that's something we do an awful lot in flamenco. We take ourselves really seriously. It allowed me to look at the work on a lighter level. Yes, I mean, failure, again, failure for me has been a very different definition, but it provided such an array of possibilities on an emotional level, on a choreographic level. So I was just absolutely blown away, but it required how many years after starting flamenco for me to find it? This is just recent, in the last 7 years, 10 years, to actually for me to go to in my studio and play, because it was also always about result. You have to do this footwork perfectly. You have to do this body images of women's images. As you know, my work is about women, for women. I like to tell women's stories, my story, you know, feminized stories. I'm a feminist, and saying that, you know, was also an issue when I started. I'd call it female-centered. So all these things, you know, that happened when I started playing. I started having a dialogue with myself, a real dialogue, not a choreographic dialogue, like a real dialogue. Who am I? Because for the longest time, for me, flamenco has been a warrior dance. It's been a warrior dance. It's been my healing art form. It's been a way to understand me and the other, but never just play. So I just want to say again, of course, my age makes, you know, you have to, in order to be an artist, you continually have to revisit your connection to that art. And play allowed me to do that as a 55-year-old woman. Thank you. Thank you for playing.
Wow, cool. Fernando, Sonia.
A ver, ¿empiezo? Vale. A ver, me han venido un montón de cosas a la cabeza según os escuchaba, porque creo que al final todos estamos en el mismo barco y sentimos las mismas cosas. Conectando con lo que comentaba Fernando, bueno, y con vuestras historias personales, yo también he venido de una educación muy restrictiva desde pequeña. Como Elba, tampoco había lugar para el juego, solamente tenía lugar para el juego con mi padre, que es un amante de la música y del arte, pero mis padres están separados, entonces los fines de semana que a mí me tocaba con mi padre era como el lugar de soñar, ¿no? Como cuando empezabas a bailar de pequeño. Y entonces mi padre ponía música y yo bailaba sin cuestionarme nada, disfrutaba y me dejaba llevar. Bien. ¿Qué pasa? Que yo tuve muy claro desde muy pequeña que quería bailar. Y vivía en un pueblo y en ese pueblo no había muchas opciones de baile, ¿no? No había flamenco profesional ni nada. Y empecé por ballet clásico porque yo lo que quería era moverme, me daba igual el qué, ¿no? Y yo no tengo nada de condiciones para el ballet. Entonces, igual que Fernando y que mucha gente, crecí escuchando qué pena que seas tan trabajadora y no tengas condiciones para bailar, ¿no? Yo no entendía ni siquiera qué significaba eso. Pero sí que yo tenía un juego que nadie supo y que hasta ahora no he sido consciente de lo bonito que era que mientras estaba en la clase de ballet, yo me ponía a hacer los ejercicios del revés. O sea, si había que colocarse con los pies así, yo decía, ¿y por qué no se puede hacer así? ¿No? Y entonces hacía todos los ejercicios, mientras los marcaba la profesora, yo los hacía al revés. Digo, ¿y si lo hago deforme, qué pasa? ¿Por qué no se puede? ¿No? Yo pensaba eso y luego era súper disciplinada a la vez y lo hacía con todo mi esfuerzo, mi voluntad, pero siempre tenía una cosa en mi cabeza de ¿por qué solo hay un camino? ¿Por qué es este camino? Y lo que yo hago está mal, es feo. ¿Por qué? Y entonces mi juego era ese durante muchísimos años. Entonces me encontré con el flamenco, que creo que el flamenco, evidentemente, si viene de una cultura gitana, entre otras, que ha sido perseguida, que ha sido reprimida durante siglos, y que esos gitanos decían, vale, no tengo para vivir, pero hagamos una fiesta, ¿no? Pero por otra parte...
To live, but let's have a party. But on the other hand,
y si nosotros hemos conectado con el flamenco, es porque...
if we've connected with flamenco, similarly to how the Roman people had to just yell because they needed to yell, we also can feel really restricted in our lives, and we just need to express ourselves, however that may be. And there are many folks that don't know how to just look for life for themselves, because you don't need to do that. And flamenco talks about that battle, and needing to adapt ourselves to having all of those emotions in one way or the other.
En lugar de, como decía Elba, de que todo es muy serio en el flamenco, todo tiene como un peso que no es real.
That at a certain point, everything has a certain weight, that everything is so serious, but that's not real. What I've learned when I've been with Roma people, and I felt sort of a little out of place, at certain points you might not be accepted, but if you know how to adapt to a certain circumstance, those that have grown up with that structure that to us seems so difficult, for them since a very young age, it's just a game. That's what makes an artist. Whatever they do, it's the pleasure behind it. And I have to do that constantly, day to day. I'll go to theater improvisation classes, and to test myself over and over there, and to laugh at myself, because that's the real work for me. And what they were saying about the ego with flamenco, that's what happens a lot. And you go out on the stage, and that's what happens, that you're the most important, and you have the musicians behind you. And get out on the street, when you're dancing, you just enter and then you exit. But on stage, that's on the street. But when you're on the stage, there's this moment of, oh, the dancer has all the responsibility. And I've gone into the tablao, a performance space at times, and I just forgot everything. And I got so scared, and I found this fear that I've never really felt before. So what he was talking about, the ego, when you're too focused on yourself, that they're looking at you, that you have the responsibility, that the show is yours. But in reality, the trick with playing, it's in the other. It's to make what they're playing you shine. It's to expand the space. It's to be in relationship with the space, but not only focused on yourself and your ego, but on the space itself. And today, with all the attention on internet and social media, we're contaminated with this idea of how to show yourself. And they've just turned out to be this sort of publicity scheme, because you're not showing who you are, really. And now with the pandemic, even more so on social media, you're just showing this image of yourself. And so with the pandemic, we're connecting less and less with who real people are, and we just need to really focus on contact, pleasure, communication. It's essential. It's essential for this idea of playing. And something that I remember always, and I'm in those moments of perfection and not playing, is to remind myself when I was young, a young girl, I used to put myself in front of the mirror. And it was this idea of enjoyment. It was this act of enjoyment, absolute enjoyment. And I wasn't thinking, is this flamenco? Is this not flamenco? It's just music that you're interpreting. And that's it. And it's clear that I'm not a person that can dance like I'm from Jerez, because I haven't grown up with that. But why does that mean that my way of dancing isn't valid? But I think it's a lot more honest if I dance from a way that I was raised and how I grew up, and I was around a dad who played music and I would just dance to the music that he played. Or if I were from Japan, I would just be able to dance in a way that incorporates my culture and who I am. But a lot of times that act of not connecting with playing, we lose that idea of who each person is and what they bring. And I think with that, I'm finished.
So yeah, I think I have problems also with playing at work, but I would like to say something concerning this image of flamenco as a serious art and so on, related to a sort of existential experience of the gypsy people, which is not really true, because the researchers have been working on the history of flamenco, and they have discovered how flamenco was created during the second half of the 19th century, related to the stage, directly to the shows created for the Café Cantantes before there wasn't flamenco. We can find like different dances similar to flamenco, for example, the bailes de palillos on the one side, on the other side we have jaleos and so on, but it wasn't flamenco. Flamenco was a romantic art created in the 19th century with a very important part of the gypsy culture, a very important part of the black culture, but everything was mixed and presented directly on the stage. So it was something more related to the cabaret, the music hall of that moment. And this is very important for me because it means that flamenco in the very beginning had nothing to do with this kind of appearance. It was more related to hybridation, to a mix of musics, of other scenic arts, of other dances, of comic and even erotic monologues, of transformists that were imitating famous stars and so on. So in the very beginning, flamenco was an element among others, and playing was a part of the daily work of the artist. And in fact, if you analyze the biographies and the work of the most important dancers at that moment, you can find that, for example, Encarnación López la Argentinita, even Antonia Merced, or other people that were working at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, they were able to dance, and not only flamenco, but also other dances. They were able to sing, and not only flamenco, but also other musics. And they were able to interpret monologues, comic, erotic monologues, and so on. So this hybridation that nowadays we are considering as the specific skill of the contemporary practice in flamenco dance, it was the real practice and the real game played in the very beginning when flamenco was created on the stage for the spectators as a show, not as a sort of a religious or religious rite or private party or something like this. So I have always problems with playing at work because of two reasons. First of all, as an artist, because I think that it's a sort of reaction against this kind of shows where we choose a subject in order to create something, but we do still the same thing. We, for example, that's something that Mikhail Fokine wrote in a manifest at the end of the 19th century against the exotic ballets, using stories related to exotic countries, but just putting a sort of veil in the ballerina and using the same ballet language, the same musics, the same frame. And that's something that I was against because it gave me the feeling that artists wanted just to create like a solo of Soleá or Alegrías of 15 minutes and inside of a bigger show with a little bit of new clothes, a little bit of a sort of yeah, a short story or something like this, using lights, using a little bit of dramaturgy elements and so on. But it was for me like, okay, they are using an excuse, an story or something like this, just to do what they want to do, which is for me that solo, that big solo, to show their ability to perform. So that's why I'm against this this meaning of play. Like whatever I tell, I will be dancing soleá for 15 or 20 minutes. Whatever I tell, I will be on the stage with my musicians and whatever, even if it doesn't fit. And on the other hand, I was against this notion of pleasure, or sorry, play, not pleasure. Yeah, because as a philosopher and a researcher, I found that sometimes we create like shows or performances based on Wikipedia, like using a little bit of information about something that we don't really know, and recreating stereotypes that are not true. And for me, it was very important to create every of my performances with a strong research before. So I didn't want to speak or to dance about something I really like, but I don't know. For example, I don't know the well, whatever, but something yeah, with a deep process of research in order to be able to present on the stage the details, the matices, the nuance. I don't know how to say it. But it's true that it's very tiring to be so rigorous on the stage. And I have to thank the different artists with whom I've been collaborating all these years, because they opened my mind, and they also allowed me to do different things I wanted to do just like this. But it's true that for me, playing at work means to be this kind of artist that used to perform in the Café Cantantes, in the cabarets, that used to dance a little bit of flamenco, but also that used to sing, used to perform, used to change the clothes. And in this kind of hybridation, I found a lot of fun, in fact.
I want to actually jump in on something that Fernando just said, because I think it's really important. And I think there's a very big difference for me in what I was talking about earlier about play, between the play that happens for me because I necessitate it in the studio and even daily life. You know, I need to be able to, and maybe it comes from my background and, you know, the persona of the trickster being so present in my cosmology. And this thing that challenges you and pokes at you, you know, are you sure that's what's happening? You know, that's the kind of play that I'm referring to. And I think that's one thing, but I'm so glad that you brought that up, Fernando. And I'm really glad that you went into this conversation with so much detail, because I think it's one of these stereotypes that we fight against on a constant basis, right? The idea that, that this is somehow, you know, a holy cow, like the cows in India, right? And it's like, no, you don't understand. You know, I remember a conversation with Niño de Elche, and he said, you know, flamenco is a capitalist art form. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. You know, from its very beginning as an art form, right? And I think that when we use a word like flamenco, the word itself is already containing a hybrid. It's already containing, you know, this hybridity that Fernando's talking about, a multiplicity, a plurality, you know, and I think too often we don't recognize that that's there. So I just wanted to highlight that, you know, the differences between play that happens in your own personal space and how you approach it, and then the rigor that is necessary if you are going to step into these spaces of researching the story you're trying to tell, or when there's not a story and you're trying to explore one of these concepts, right? I too get very tired of the big conceptual framework, right? And then what I'm watching is the same alegría the person has always done for the last 15 years, right? So yeah, just wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, it reminds me like,
all its lots. Oye, dale, Fernanda, ¿qué ibas a decir?
Yes, this I don't know if The Simpsons, you know, that series, of course. This chapter with Stacy Malibu with a different hat. So for me, it was like yeah, the merchandising of the same flamenco solo with a different lighting, with a different dramaturgical frame, with a different hat, with a different bata de cola, and that's all. But the codes, the flamenco language, the relationship of the dancer with her or his own body, with the other musicians, with the other dancers was yeah, the same.
Jump on that. I know we're running out of time, but you know, we in flamenco training, there isn't the training about negative space. We are not trained to utilize large spaces. So we fall back onto these things because of some of the lack of training that we have. Now, of course, nowadays, artists are trained in numerous genres, and you're getting MFA, you're going to learn about choreography and that sort of thing. But what I want to talk about just briefly is that the play that we're looking at, and I was very fortunate enough to see La Curva. I brought it to Israel Galvan, talking about play. I mean, he is a comedian within this very serious dance form. He comes out and makes two comments that just makes the whole form a complete different experience. And so that kind of play is requires such vulnerability, you know, that, and I think the comfort level in that is a required, after you've been trained with such rigidity, your focus is on product, not process, not, you know, entertainment or spectacle. You know, all these parts of flamenco that are crucial, have played a part in showing flamenco, has limited us. I know that it has limited me to the notion of playing, and now, of course, I realize it's essential. So I'm sorry, I'll stop.
I would love to continue this conversation until the end of time because it is incredibly interesting, but it's time to end. So no more talking, anybody. We're done. He dicho. I just want to thank all of you for coming here, talking to me before, having these long conversations, because it's just like I said, this doesn't end here. And for those of you who are watching, if there are questions that you have for any of these wonderful artists here, please ask them. And I'm sure they would be happy to talk to you about it, because there are things here that are so essential, not just to flamenco, but to the practices artists in general. And I am in more question now than when I began, which is good, because if you're not asking questions, what the fuck are you learning? So with that, I'm going to end that here. Thank you all again. Thank you, Jonah Bokaer Arts Foundation. Thank you, Flamenco Vivo, Carlota, Santana, Elba with Pasión y Arte, Niurka Marquez, Fernando Lopez Rodriguez, Sonia Gutierrez, Elena Wilson, Ryan Rockmore, Leslie Roybal, everybody. Thank you to all of my comadres and compadres and whatever, everybody out there. I love you and thank you. Any questions you have, put them in the chat, direct them to everybody else. I have nothing else to say. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hans. And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for joining for today's conversation. Once again, I'm Elena Wilson, company manager with Jonah Bokaer Arts Foundation. We can't thank you enough, Hans. Hans is one of our Shea Bushwick artists in residence for putting together such a rich and interesting discussion, and we're so pleased to have been able to present this today. I will share in the chat our webpage from this event, which does have all the bios from today's panelists and their websites if you're interested in learning more about any of them and their work. And then the last thing I'll say is we have another virtual presentation tomorrow that is specifically focused on Shea Bushwick's artist in residence. So Hans will be back to talk some more. And that talk will specifically focus on our 5 current artists in residence and their experiences making work during the pandemic. And I will put the webpage for that event in the chat as well. So thanks so much to everyone, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I would like to meet you one day in New York or in Spain. Ryan.